Hi, I'm Tony Monteiro, President of the Elizabeth Board of Education. Welcome to the President's Forum Budget Edition. On behalf of the Elizabeth Board of Education and the Elizabeth Public Schools, I would like to thank the members of the Elizabeth community for supporting excellence in our schools. Through your support of our past school budgets, the Elizabeth Public Schools has been able to increase student performance and achievement to the level of becoming the #1 urban school district in the state of New Jersey. During the past year, the Elizabeth Public Schools has enjoyed many successes achieved by our students and team members. Here are some of the highlights of the Elizabeth Public Schools achievements during that time through your support. Joining me now on the President's Forum is our Elizabeth Board of Education Business Administrator and Board Secretary, Mr. Bud Kennedy. And alongside Bud, we have our Assistant Board Secretary, Mr. Don Gonsalves. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
We're going to talk now today about the budget, and I think the single most important thing is we just went through our budget committee meetings, and we know it was a difficult and painful things, but a lot of great things have also happened. Don, would you like to share some of that process with us?
Well, as you indicate, it is a very difficult process. The board did set the charge for us to deliver a budget that committed to what was taking place in the classroom for excellence for our kids, but also ensuring that we were sensitive to the needs of the taxpayer. So under the leadership of my boss here, Harold Kennedy, as well as the team that worked on the budget, we were able to deliver to the board, as you had asked us to, a 0% no tax increase for this year's budget, which we believe would probably be exactly what the taxpayer of the city of Elizabeth needed today, given the present circumstances with taxes from City Hall.
That is correct, Don. But how many, just so the people at home understand this, that this was a process that took months in the making and many hours and many meetings. Can you go a little bit more into that so the people at home understand the arduous process of this budget?
Sure. It starts early in August, actually, right after the new school year starts. And as Don said, we were directed by the Finance Committee, led by Mr. Pereira, that we were to craft a budget with the taxpayer in mind, a 0% increase. So from September all the way up through the adoption, the initial submission in March of 2014, the superintendent had all the administrative departments putting in their requests, fine-tuning them. Then we would go back to the Finance Committee meetings on several occasions, show where we were at. A little bit different this year was that the Finance Committee was highly involved almost on a line-by-line basis, so that everything was looked at to ultimately come up with the budget that we presented in March.
That's, Bud, that's probably one of the hardest things that myself as a board member and my colleagues have to do is really to sit around that table and obviously to go through those numbers and to make those difficult cuts. But, I couldn't be prouder of the Finance Committee led by our chairman, Mr. Paul Pereira, who put in so many hours, so many days and nights. I know he had us always in contact, both with the superintendent as well as with yourself and with Don. But to get to this point, and I think we see the slide up there, which is that we're going to present a no tax increase to the citizens of Elizabeth. Don, once again, how is that possible that we, after all that we went through and how much services we provide to the students here of the city of Elizabeth, how is it possible that we were able to come up with a 0% tax increase?
Well, it's really important to have a strong relationship with the board so that a lot of the decisions are really aligned with what the school district is doing as far as our strategic plan, supporting great teaching in the classroom. And it's really challenging in a place like Elizabeth because, as we know, the population has increased dramatically over the years. In fact, I'm looking right now at the statistics. In the year 2001, we had 20,000 kids, a little over 20,000 kids. Right now, we have over 26,000 kids. So in the span of a 10, 12-year period, you've seen a dramatic increase with our school population. And of course, the school district under this leadership, Tony Monteiro, as well as the rest of the board, has been able to get funds and resources from the state of New Jersey so we can build new schools. And that's really important so we could go ahead and improve our physical plant. So that type of pressure that's taken place with regards to the increasing population in the city of Elizabeth and ensuring that our kids are educated to the highest standards really makes it a challenge for us to be able to deliver on a budget like we did this year. But we did it, 0% tax increase.
That's true, Don. And I want the people at home to also know and understand that myself, along with Don, we have a long history together. We've been great friends, and we've seen a lot of things here in the city. And those at home know that, Don, you know that taxes is a very personal issue to myself. Back in the year of 2001, while serving as an Elizabeth City Councilman, I was removed from a city council meeting fighting for this very thing, the tax increase that the city was proposing that year. It was much similar to this. It was on a budget. I was opposed to that budget, that increase, and I was going line by line, expressing my dissatisfaction with my colleagues. And at that time, they saw fit to have me removed from that city council chamber and arrested for speaking my mind on these taxes. And here we are in 2014, many years later, and today serving the city of Elizabeth and now our students in our schools. And again, I can't tell you how proud I am of this team, of Bud, Don, the superintendent, my colleagues on the board, that they were able to deliver a 0% tax increase to the taxpayers. And why this is relevant to all those at home watching is because so much information that goes out there, certainly in the propaganda, both through the media and for the people who just like to spread misinformation. And that was something that was going on often last year. But you could probably speak on this. Last year, I think the Board of Education has been good managers of the money for the past several years. And I know there's a slide we're looking at right now that shows the city of Elizabeth, and I believe in the last, 15 years, the huge difference between how the Elizabeth Board of Education has managed their money and how the city of Elizabeth has managed theirs. Can you explain a little bit more about that, Bud, about the misinformation that was being spread last year?
Well, being the numbers guy for the district, I don't really like to get involved with misrepresentations, but the numbers are the numbers. And if you look at the chart before you, back in 1997, we were both the city of Elizabeth, the red line, and the Board of Ed were right about at the $38 million tax levy level. If you follow it across, now at the end of 2014, where our current levy is $52 million, the difference in the city's levy that has increased from 1997 up to $133 million. So if the district shows actually in some years falling taxes and increasing over that period from 38 to 52, city 38 to 133. So right now our difference is $81 million. So to say that the residents of the city of Elizabeth pay taxes just because of the Board of Ed is not an accurate statement.
That's true, Bud. And as I look at this chart, and if you look at, like you said, from the periods of 1997 to approximately 2007, 10 straight years, Don, you can see it basically flatline. We're basically no tax increase or sometimes even a tax decrease. And it's only been in the past several years where a slight increase may have mounted here at the Elizabeth Board of Education. But we have now we've also taken one of the probably worst school districts back in the early 90s when it was, again, politically controlled, appointed school board, to a board now that's turned itself around to being the #1 urban school district in the state with very little to no tax increase. Am I correct on that, Mr.
Absolutely.
Sal?
But if you look at last year's tax increase that took place, in fact, we have a chart to let everybody know that in 2013, the tax levy for the city of Elizabeth from City Hall was $133 million, and the tax levy from the Board of Education was $52 million. So we saw an increase from the City of Elizabeth of $7 million compared to the Board of Ed, which was only $3.6 million. This year, the City of Elizabeth hasn't announced its tax levy as of yet, so we can't necessarily tell you exactly as to whether it keeps taxes stable or not, but we haven't seen that over the period. Nonetheless, the record speaks for itself. When you look over the long term, we've been very, very judicious with how we spend our funds. And we're fairly fortunate as a school district because as a result of an equity decision that was made by the courts many years ago, either through Abbott versus Burke or even through the funding formula that we have today with the state of New Jersey, a lot of the funds that we receive are from the state of New Jersey, and that helps us here in Elizabeth to ensure that our kids receive a world-class education.
Don, also, and Bud, on that point, to clarify something for the people at home, because they talk about often the new schools that we're building here in Elizabeth, and we've built several new great schools, state-of-the-art schools. But this has been at no cost to the taxpayers. And again, I want to stress that. This has been at no cost to the taxpayers of the city of Elizabeth. Bud, can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, the biggest outcome of no cost to the city of Elizabeth taxpayer is that we have absolutely zero debt on our books. So all these buildings that you see going up or have been construction, no long-term debt for the city of Elizabeth taxpayer. And if I could go back to the tax levy chart, the question mark in 2014, our proposed tax levy in 2014, which was submitted in March, we know it's 52,313,124, no tax increase. Why don't we know the city of Elizabeth? Because they don't have to adopt their budget or submit their budget until September of 2014. So when we, last year, historically, from 48 to 52, we had the same question mark, yet the board was being criticized for that tax increase. Well, eventually they did submit their budget, and their tax increase went from 125 to 133. So once again, to say that the tax burden on the taxpayer of Elizabeth is solely the responsibility of the Board of Ed, it's not accurate. The numbers don't lie. 3.6 million for the Board of Ed, 7.2 million for the city of Elizabeth.
Okay, thanks, Bud. Now we have a chart up there that this year's budget is less than last year's budget. Explain that, Bud.
Well, it's a combination of a few things. The reason that it's actually lower is because we were basically held flat with our state aid. And as everyone knows, the federal government has cut back on our federal aid. So that gave us less resources to work with this year. So by a function of the available revenue, we were required to submit a budget that was $5 million less this year.
And the point there goes to the fact that we have to make some difficult decisions, and there's been some, we have to make some sacrifices in regarding to staffing cuts and to program cuts. But doing all this while still keeping this, the Elizabeth focused on our school children. Don, you could touch on this better than anyone about how much goes into running these schools and how they're performing. And we're doing it still at this 0% tax increase.
Well, under the leadership of our superintendent as well as with our business administrator, we always stay true to our focus of making sure that the funds go directly into the classroom as much as we can to ensure that the teachers are getting the proper resources, that the kids are getting all the necessary materials, that we're putting the latest technology into our schools to ensure that our kids are prepared for the 21st century, for the global economy. But of course, serious decisions have to be made with regards to cutbacks. And in fact, when you see our budget, administrative costs have been driven down. A lot of other costs were driven down, and that's really where the people, our taxpayer, want to see it happen the most, because they want to ensure that the kids still have the necessary resources to be educated properly, and we believe our budget does that.
80% of our budget goes into the classroom.
That's great. And you know what, Bud and Don, unfortunately, it's just one of those facts of life, but we have had to let people go, and we've made reductions in staff over the last several years, and that by far is one of the most difficult things, obviously, to do. But we've done this while preserving, again, our tax rate here to the city of Elizabeth. And again, it's difficult decisions while preserving still a great educational experience here in the city of Elizabeth. So, again, my hat's off to your team, to the entire finance committee. But, I want people at home to know that there are still difficult decisions that are made on a daily basis, and with still putting education as the number one priority here in the city of Elizabeth.
I think Donald pointed out earlier the increase over 10 years in our student population of almost 6,000 kids. And I've heard you say at many of our board meetings, people used to be leaving the city of Elizabeth.
Right.
Now they're coming back because, why? Because we've got a great school system.
But let's really talk about that for a minute, because that's something, myself and Don, as lifelong Elizabeth residents, can talk about. There was a time, I know when I was going to school, that our parents certainly considered having moved out of town or leaving town, or sending their children to other school districts because we had a failing school district. This was probably no more than 15, 20 years ago, Don. And Don could speak about this as well, that was going on. It was a daily thing. And when I was a councilman in the city of Elizabeth, I can't tell you how often I heard that parents were going to move out of the city of Elizabeth. They were not going to send their kids to the middle schools or to the high schools. And today, what we're seeing is the complete opposite. We now have an enrollment problem where children are coming in from other towns, enrolling in Elizabeth. Parents are possibly using addresses here in the city of Elizabeth, and we are now committed to taking on that problem that we have. We found that parents who don't live in Elizabeth, we're going to go after them aggressively. That their children, if a parent is living in Linden and their child is attending the Elizabeth public school systems, we're going to aggressively attack that issue. But again, it's a double-edged sword. Years ago, people were leaving Elizabeth because of our public school systems. Now people are fighting to get into our school systems. Don, you could speak about this and also about how this program that we have in place now to check for residency and to help minimize this overcrowding that we're facing right now.
It's a phenomenon that will always surprises us every time we think about it, that there are in fact people that are coming from other parts of Union County. And even for our early childhood program, people have come from Westfield and from Cranford to attend our schools here in Elizabeth. So I think people shouldn't believe the propaganda when they hear that clearly people are willing to bring their kids here to Elizabeth Public Schools. They know the quality of the product. And we've been successful at improving not only at the early childhood level, but also elementary at the high school. Tony, as you know, just last week we received a new award. I don't know if you want to go ahead and announce it for the TV public, but once again, U.S. News came out with their latest ratings. So we were very proud with that, with the Elizabeth High School as well as Alexander Hamilton receiving national awards on the U.S. News and World Report standings, as well as on the Washington Post. So we've got in the Washington Post with Elizabeth High School, the #1 high school in the state of New Jersey. And that really speaks volumes with regards to Mike Cummings, the principal there, as well as the leadership team over there, as well as the teachers.
Don, as I travel outside the city of Elizabeth, people seem to really have a hard time believing that Elizabeth High School has now become one of the top high schools in the state of New Jersey, along with Hamilton, and that we have 3 national blue ribbon schools here in the city of Elizabeth. But as I travel outside, people really are having a hard time believing that is possible. Why is that?
Well, the Washington Post ratings is based on the advanced proficiency testing. And, we made a commitment many years ago to go ahead and increase the amount of advanced proficiency courses taking place in Elizabeth High School, Alexander Hamilton, and all the rest of the high schools as well. And as a result of that policy, you see it's starting to bear the fruits today. Between that, the increase in the amount of credits to graduate Elizabeth High School, teaching algebra in the 8th grade, really ensuring that our kids are receiving a rigorous level of instruction at the high school level. It's starting to produce the fruits and starting to underscore why Elizabeth High School, Alexander Hamilton, and even the other high schools have improved dramatically as far as their level of instruction.
The big thing in the budget, and it's being maintained, once again, Don said, the 160 credit requirement to graduate, highest in the state. In addition, all of our high schools are on an extended day period, 7:30 to 3:56. We're even with our financial challenges, that's going to stay in this year's budget.
No, it's absolutely outstanding what's happening here in our Elizabeth school system. And I want to take this opportunity, obviously, to thank our staff, our administration, the teachers, our support staff from custodians, security, who work so hard day in and day out to make this all possible. It really is a team effort here in the Elizabeth school system, and I couldn't be prouder of these men sitting here next to me, as well as all their colleagues that work so hard to make this school system what it is today, one of the top districts. But getting back to that issue that I know a lot of people are concerned about is that our enrollment has been increasing over the past several years. And some of that we are concerned that of overcrowding. We're concerned that they are coming from outside of town and using addresses here where they don't live here. What are we doing about that now?
We've run a software check which runs our addresses, which are maintained in our student information system, against a best known address for that student's parents. And if the addresses match, then they seem to live in Elizabeth. If they don't match, it suggests where that parent might be living. And then that starts off asking that parent to prove where they live.
And I understand, speaking to our board council, that there's the possibility that now you can actually go after is it the parent or the town to receive the money for that year, for that tuition for that year.
That would be for some of the special service students that are sent out of district, and we pay tuition for them. If it comes out that that person isn't a resident of Elizabeth and lives in another town, our Board of Education can go back to the other town and ask for a reimbursement of tuition paid in the past.
No, that would be great. So we also want the people at home watching this program to know that if you come across information that you may have about some children that are attending our school system that shouldn't be, that the parents don't live in the city of Elizabeth and are using possibly an address outside of Elizabeth, please contact the office of the Elizabeth Board of Education, either Bud Kennedy's office or Don Gonsalves' office, and provide that information. All of it will be looked into and investigated. So, once again, this has just been a very exciting year across the board for what's going on. And as Don spoke about, that Washington Post has named Elizabeth High School #1, Alexander Hamilton also improving. What other achievements are going on right now throughout the district, Don?
Well, we're right here in the studios over at Thomas Jefferson Arts Academy, and right next door, a brand new high school is under construction. The Frank J. Sickrell Academic High School, which is going to open up in September of 2016. Once again, tens of millions of dollars being invested here in Elizabeth by the Board of Ed with not 1 cent from the local taxpayer. The state of New Jersey helped give us the funds to construct a brand new high school, and of course they've started construction. In fact, today they're actually putting up steel as well for this high school that's going to be an academic high school for 1,000 high performing kids at the high school level here in Elizabeth.
And we also are just ready to break ground in the next couple of months on the new William F. Holloran School #22, which is going to be constructed over by Elizabeth High School.
Yeah, this is all terrific what's happening. So we have 25,000 plus kids now in uniforms. We've built all these new state-of-the-art schools. Our schools are ranked, both in our state as top schools nationally, and so much more to come. So I think the people have to understand something else that's taking place economically, which is what it does to the economics of the city of Elizabeth as well as the property values. Don, you must see that in your neighborhood, certainly, Bud, you must understand that from the economic point of view, but our property values are certainly increasing. People are moving into the city of Elizabeth. certainly the flood of people leaving Elizabeth isn't happening. Don, you could speak to that about what's happening in your own neighborhood.
Well, it just happens we have a list of all the schools we've put up, and just recently, within the last year, we opened up the Victor Mravilag School number 21 over in Elmora Hills. That's a brand new, beautiful school. We know that the community was waiting for that school to finally open, and of course, that's been a huge boost for that neighborhood because many people wanted to go ahead and have their child attend their neighborhood school. But we also looked at other parts of town, and St. Patrick's closed down recently, and we know that St. Patrick's has a special place in your heart, Tony. You haven't been an alumni from there. But we went ahead and instituted the School Number 8 iPrep Academy, which is a one-to-one computer learning environment. That means every single child gets access to a computer there at School Number 8, which is at the old St. Pat's campus in Elizabethport. So all over Elizabeth. It's not just in Elmora Hills and not just in Midtown, Elizabethport as well. We built School 8 as well as School 28, which is the Duarte Marti School. And, as we saw on the list before, of all the schools that Tony, you as a board member have been able to cut the ribbon on, School 50, Francis Smith, Donald Stewart, School 51, Dr. King, number 52, Dr. Orlando Idreda, number 26, Dr. Antonia Pantoa, School number 27, Duarte Marti, as I mentioned before, number 28, Albert Einstein, School number 21 on North Broad Street, Ronald Reagan on North Avenue, School number 30, the Monsignor Joao on Town, School number 31 over on South Elmore Avenue. We went ahead and instituted programs at Holy Rosary's old site, which is where Charles Hudson is, School number 25. We acquired St. Catherine's for the Hamilton Annex, which is an award-winning program. St. Adalbert's, School number 1's annex. St. Hedwig's, an annex for School number 5. Blessed Sacrament, because we know that the population has been increasing dramatically over School 16 in North Elizabeth, right? We've acquired that site, the acquisition of St. Vladimir's, which is where Lower Academy is. iPrep, as I mentioned before, the Victor Mravilag School, and now the construction of the 2 new schools that will open up in 2016, Frank J. Sickrell Academy, as well as the Halloran Academy over at School number 22's field.
Don, and just to piggyback on what you just said about all these new schools, and it's something important for people at home to understand and know that we are the 4th largest school district in the state of New Jersey, and the districts all above us, larger than Elizabeth, have all been taken over by the state of New Jersey. Newark has been taken over, Jersey City is under the control of the state, and Patterson, and below us, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Camden also. So all these large urban school districts have been taken over by the state of New Jersey, and here the city of Elizabeth has become a model, not only for our state, but I think also nationally, and people from all over are really looking at what is taking place here. But why is that Elizabeth is doing so much different than that of Newark and that of Camden?
I think it's just the focus that the board has had on the prize, which is being the #1 school district in New Jersey and also becoming #1 in America. With that almost audacious goal for the city of Elizabeth, when you have all your team members knowing that's the goal and working to strive to get there, that's the difference.
It really is. And, Bud and Don could probably talk a little bit about this, that what we face in the city of Elizabeth. I mean, it's not a stranger to anyone that Elizabeth Board of Education and our City Hall, we tend to kind of, like the 2 elephants in the room, and we seem to butt heads, and at the end, only the grass gets hurt, right? That old African saying. But Don, talk a little about this. What would be the potential of the city of Elizabeth, City Hall, Board of Education, us all working together? I mean, what do you see in that vision?
We believe that everyone, if they stay focused, could work together. I think we all have that dream of being able to collaborate more deeply, in the construction of these schools. We know that a number of years ago we had a problem with trying to build a new vocational technical academy, and it probably would have been built today if we had a more cooperative spirit. But moving forward, hopefully things will change. With leadership, with a commitment, whether it be building a vocational technical academy or just ensuring that kids get the support and programs that they need. You know, that's what the taxpayer wants. They don't want the politics. They just want people, no matter what side you're on, to work together. And we aspire to that.
You know, Don, I couldn't agree more. We've both been on both sides of the, of the aisle. We've worked both in elected office in the political side, and here we are now at the Elizabeth Board of Education. And again, we let, I guess, the results speak for themselves. What's happening here, this incredible transformation. I hear it every single day when I visit the schools, when I talk to the parents, particularly to the teachers who have been in the district 20 years. They just can't stop talking about what they've seen in this transformation. Speaking to parents who are just all giddy about that's the city of Elizabeth now. This is their home. They're just so excited that their kids are in these top performing schools. And one of the things that I always touches my heart is when I now come up upon a car that has a bumper sticker that my child goes to Elizabeth Public School System, or they've got that. The pride is back. And I don't know if it was ever there. And I'm just so happy to see that taking place in the city of Elizabeth. And I always think beyond the politics. I always think, what if we were all united, if we just put Elizabeth first? And that, I guess, is all our dream, that the potential of what Elizabeth can be, great school system, great urban city. And I know it could happen. You know it could happen, Don, but I'm sure you know it could happen. It's just going to take, the meeting of the minds coming together. But it's certainly happening here in the city of Elizabeth. And there's more to come, because we know our dream isn't just to be the number one urban school district. It's to be the number one school district in the country. And we know that that's our dream, that's our mission, and we have an incredible staff. Don, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about, we haven't spoken much about, but our new superintendent, Olga Ugemeyer, and her background and how hard she's working and what her vision is for the next couple of years in Elizabeth.
Well, Bud and I know, even through the budget process, that her primary focus is what we now label as the 3 E's, which is equity, expectations, and excellence. And that's really what everything that we do in our school district has really got to revolve around that. How we build a budget, how we manage people, how we lead, and how our teachers know that they're receiving the resources, once again, so that kids are educated properly. And that's dealing with all of the all the different issues that kids come to school with. The school district is a place of safe haven for many of our children. And really, that's the focus of our superintendent, to ensure that the kids get the social, emotional supports that they need, that they get the supports, that they're fed properly, that we go ahead and ensure that we continue our uniform policy, which has been such a success based on the board's commitment to it, and ensuring that our schools are safe, that they're safe and secure places from the streets of Elizabeth. When a kid goes to school in the morning, that they know, and their parents know, their guardians know, that they're going to be able to be educated in a safe, warm, loving environment. And really, that's what the superintendent and we believe the board has committed themselves to, with this commitment to the 3 E's: equity, expectations, and excellence.
If I could say something about our new superintendent, she's new to that position, but as far as the budget goes, I mentioned before, 80% of our budget goes to the classroom. And since I've been here in 2000, right next to us in the business office has been Mrs. Hugelmeyer, driving the needs and the requests of all that 80% of the budget. If you ever have the opportunity to speak with her about where the board said go line by line by line, there's the woman that did it, our superintendent. So behind the scenes, leading up to her appointment recently as superintendent. Prior to that, she was our chief academic officer, and she was the one that was crafting the budgets in the past and was a great help this year.
Yeah, I got to say that too. Jump on there with Olga Ugemeyer. Olga has always been in the trenches as long as I've known her in the past, dozen years, working out there with all her team members, from principals, vice principals, well respected, well regarded, and incredibly well qualified in the position she now holds as our superintendent. And we as a board couldn't be luckier and more fortunate to have someone right there in our midst to step into the shoes of our former superintendent, who did such a wonderful job in transforming this district. But Olga, it's like I always joke with her, it's like picking up the football on the 20-yard line and running it into the end zone. Olga knows what the mission at hand is. She knows what our vision is, and she's committed to making this our number one, school district in the country. And I just can't say enough about how hard and how passionate Mrs. Jugelmeyer is in this quest to becoming the number one school district. She has a great team around her. Our principals and our vice principals, just above and beyond, go above and beyond. Just from top to bottom, this is a great district. We're proud to certainly be part of it. And for those who don't know, again, Elizabeth Board of Education members are not paid to serve on these boards. We're elected public servants, and we do it for the love and the passion of our city and our schools and our children. And I see it every day as I visit the schools, the hard work of this team, and I can't say enough about them. So on that note, and I know today this is our certainly our budget meeting, we digressed a little bit going back into this. Something else that a parent or a resident brought up to my attention is that why do we hire people from outside the city of Elizabeth? And I wanted to clarify that today on this budget show. Back in, was it January of 2013, when I came on to the Elizabeth board, or I was appointed as the board president, we passed a moratorium at that day to only hire non-certificated people from the city of Elizabeth. Am I correct? Mike, can you speak a little bit about what certificated and non-certificated employees are so people at home understand?
Sure. Certificated means you have a license to practice the job or craft that you do at the Elizabeth Board of Education. So all teachers are certificated, principals are certificated, supervisors, directors. Myself, I'm a certificated. I have a license to be the business administrator. So originally the board thought about making everybody have to live in Elizabeth, certificated or non-certificated, but there are laws and rules that prevent us from doing that. Non-certificated means you don't need a license to practice your craft or occupation at the Board of Ed. So the board was within their rights and law to require all non-certificated people working at the board to be from Elizabeth, all new hires. There is a grandfather provision, which means if you were working for the board and were non-certificated, you didn't have to meet that residency requirement, except for a year later.
So just to clarify, so non-certificated, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, would be our majority of our support staff. So we're talking from food services to security to our custodians to our secretary,
Bus drivers,
bus
truck
attendants, multi-purpose aides, correct?
Yes. Sure.
So again, I want everyone at home really to be just clear on this point, that since of January of 2013, the Elizabeth Board of Education will now only hire people who live and will reside in the city of Elizabeth. That is now part of our Board of Education policy for non-certificated. The law does not allow us to do that to the certificated employees, such as teachers, administrators, or people who hold certain licenses. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And I think I think we've all received tremendous feedback about that. That again, reason for that being that now the people who live, work in the city of Elizabeth will invest in the city of Elizabeth, will take a greater interest in our city, be a part of our community, and just be more plugged into what's going on here, not only in our schools, but certainly in our city in its entirety. What do you think about that, Don?
Well, we think it's a policy that finally was passed. It took a lot of leadership to go ahead and move forward. But, it makes a lot of sense. And clearly you couldn't do it with the teachers because you want to ensure that you have the best teachers and that there's enough teachers that are applying to fill all of the positions. And, we have close to 2,000 teaching professionals throughout the school district. But for those positions that are non-certified, for people that need jobs in the city of Elizabeth, that want to go ahead and continue paying the mortgage on their home, that send their kids to the school district here, that invested in the city of Elizabeth, that called Elizabeth home, why shouldn't they get the first opportunity to be able to work for the Elizabeth Public Schools? That made all the sense in the world. So it was under your leadership, Tony. We know that was a really important guideline that you have helped push for, and the board was supportive of it, and we know that administration we did what it took to ensure that that all of the legal guidelines were fulfilled. That's what Bud was, discussing now with regards to the certification and non-certificated staff members.
Great. Well, thank you for that insight, Don. I think it is going well, and I think, again, for the people who here live in Elizabeth, I mean, that's where our heart is, certainly in Elizabeth. And I certainly see Elizabeth has come, a long way. And like any troubled times that we just went through in the past couple of years with the Great Recession that this country and certainly our city faced. And unemployment will always has been and probably will always continue to be higher in larger urban cities such as the city of Elizabeth. So I think this policy that the board has taken on will help to curb some of that, to keep the jobs here in Elizabeth, have people invest in Elizabeth. Certainly we're seeing it in our neighborhoods. But getting back to our budget, Don, and there's a slide I think we have of a pie chart, and where each dollar goes to that gets sent to the city of Elizabeth for property taxes. And I think it's important that, and it simplifies it, where each single dollar goes, that gets sent to the city of Elizabeth for property taxes. But the chart, so explain that.
Well, what that chart shows is for every dollar of tax payment that a resident makes, 16% goes to Union County, 24% goes to support our schools, and 60% goes to support the City of Elizabeth budget.
I think it's a very relevant slide we have up there because it's the distribution of our tax dollars in the city of Elizabeth. And people really need to understand this slide. So for every dollar that gets sent to City of Elizabeth for property taxes, 60% of that dollar goes to municipal government. And only 24 cents of that dollar comes here to the Elizabeth Board of Education. Now, why this is very, very important for people at home to understand, because throughout most cities in the state of in the state of New Jersey, throughout most of our cities, that happens to be the opposite.
That's
Am
right.
I correct, Mr. Kennedy?
That's correct. Usually you would see in a non-school development authority, formerly Abbott District, you would probably see the school-based portion of that dollar flip-flopped with what the city of Elizabeth is showing now.
So, for instance, like a town of Cranford or a town of Hillside, that would be probably more than likely if 50-some% would go to the Board of Education.
Yes, they get because of our special status as an urban district. The state of New Jersey supports us in all the endeavors that we do at the Board of Ed, and that helps out the taxpayer in Elizabeth.
And I guess the reason I'm stressing this slide so much is because I think people at home really need to understand how much this Board of Education does with what little they get from the residents of the city of Elizabeth. And although I feel the residents of the city of Elizabeth are already overtaxed and struggling as may be, it's important to understand that only 24 cents of every one of their dollars is coming here to the Elizabeth Board of Education. And had they lived in any other town, that would probably be 50, 60 cents of their dollar. But Elizabeth Board of Education is doing so much more with so little from the taxpayers of Elizabeth. And that's why it's an important slide to show. And even more so, following that this year we have a 0% tax increase to the residents of the city of Elizabeth. So this year the levy, the portion that is going to remain flat, the same as last year to the residents of the city. Am I correct?
That's right. And then once again, we don't know at this point what the city of Elizabeth tax levy is going to be. But if they raise the tax levy, then those percentages are going to go up and down respectively.
So let me ask you this, Bud. So why is it that the Board of Education for many years can hold either hold flat or have a very slight increase, and this year have a 0% tax increase, and the city of Elizabeth can't deliver a 0% tax increase or hasn't been able to? What are the reasons for that?
That's one, just being the numbers guy in the district. I would have to defer to my counterpart over at City Hall. I know what we do with our budget and how we craft our budget. I'm not privy to how they craft their budget or decide what their tax levy is going to be.
And Don, you were a former freeholder back in your day. Why do you think that the city of Elizabeth can't or shouldn't be able to deliver a 0% tax increase like the Elizabeth Board of Education is doing this year?
Well, I'm not sure exactly why, but I know that it requires tough decision-making. It really requires that you look at every single item within your budget, and you have to be able to decide exactly what your priorities are. That's what we did here at the Elizabeth Board of Ed, and as a result, we were able to continue our support of what was taking place in the classroom, but also ensure that we have, as you wanted, Tony, a 0% no tax increase budget.
And jumping on that, Don, it's not pain free. And I think everyone can understand it's not pain free. There's pain involved in a 0% tax increase, both on our side as well as I'm sure on the municipal side. It's going to come with possibly some program cuts, some cut in staffing. I mean, obviously there's pain being inflicted, and we understand that sacrifice we're making to ensure that our residents of the city can breathe a little easier and not bear any more of that burden that they have to already with the taxes. So. And being a freeholder, you understand what goes along with a 0% budget increase. So,
Well, I knew when I was on the freeholder board at the time, and you were on city council, you were one of the few individuals that always voted against the tax increase. You know, that was your legacy there at city council. In fact, and many people might not know, but Tony was actually led out of city council in handcuffs as a result of the stand you took to vote against the tax increase. And, that's a legacy that you still have today, being the tax fighter that you are. I think people know that. People have probably, throughout the years, certainly this year, with all of the challenges that people go through financially, I know that you're in touch with them when you speak to them at churches, at the restaurants here in town. And they tell you the stuff that I hear as well, which is it's tough to survive, it's tough to make ends meet. People are trying to stretch the dollar as much as they can. And the last thing they want to hear is that there's another tax increase. So we did everything possible. There's a lot of sacrifices on the horizon, but nonetheless, we're still able to operate a school district that educates our kids, 26,000 of them, to what we think are the highest standards we can with the amount of money that we receive from the state of New Jersey.
And Don, you just touched on something that we have some of the highest standards in the state, and maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more about that, both in credits to graduate from high school as well as extended day. Just touch a little bit about what those standards are that we have here at the Elizabeth Public School System.
Well, Bud touched on them before. At the high school level, we've got some of the highest standards in the nation, not only in the state of New Jersey, but it takes 160 credits to graduate any of our high schools. At most New Jersey high schools, it's 120 credits. And our kids attend school from 7:30 all the way up through 4 o'clock at the high school level. Now, that extended day is going to modify for us at the elementary level, because we'll be going, shaving 45 minutes off of our time. And we think that that will be well received from what we understand, not only from parents and team members, but also probably from the kids. But we know at the high school level, we're still going to keep the same level of rigor and momentum, which means those high standards. Algebra in the 8th grade, ensuring that our kids this year in this budget, we have over 10,000 laptop computers that are going to be distributed throughout the city of Elizabeth, and that's because, one, we want to ensure that the kids know how to use the technology, are prepared for the marketplace, but we also have to prepare our own school district for the national testing standards, which are referred to as PARC, and all of that is done online. So we have to make sure that we have the technology in the classrooms to ensure that we can test properly our kids throughout the district. So that is one of the highlights of this particular budget is the amount of laptops and technology that we're investing in the classrooms throughout the district. So the kids are going to see that in September of 2014.
That's been remarkable. And, we talk about these endeavors that we've undertaken here at the Elizabeth Board of Education. But President Barack Obama and the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, they have been big proponents of extended day, throughout the country. And they don't seem to be, it just doesn't seem to be happening everywhere. Even our governor here in the state was pushing for it on his budget address, extended day. And here we are, the Elizabeth Board of Education, already ahead of that curve. that we're already ahead of a curve that certainly the president is pushing for and the governor, and we're doing it while no other district is doing it. So we've increased these rigors, but we're seeing it in the results. Am I correct? And just seeing it in the test scores, seeing it in the academies, in the blue ribbon schools. And speak a little bit about the three blue ribbon schools that we have, Don, and the rigors and what it took to go from what they were to becoming a blue ribbon school.
Well, probably one of our big success stories has to be school number 7, Terrence Riley, because anybody that knows that building, it used to exist as Grover Cleveland, which was the school that nobody would want to attend. And, we've been able to.
I used to avoid that school when I was a kid,
Me
Don,
too.
but it was in a neighborhood that we would actually, and Don knows it as well as I, that we weren't allowed to go walk near the school, go near when it was coming out, when it was time that they let the kids out. We avoided that school. It was that bad.
Right. Well, I lived on Rankin Street, which was the street right next door to School 7, so I knew it well, and that was the block that my mom wouldn't let me go up on in my own neighborhood. So yeah, as a kid, we used to avoid that school because we knew how treacherous it was. But that whole dynamic has changed dramatically. People at the first year when we went ahead and advertised it as being a gifted and talented school, there was probably a lot of skeptics, and we saw that. But after the first year, under the leadership of the present principal, which is Jennifer Cedeno, that school is one of the top producing schools in the state of New Jersey. And as we know, the school's been recognized by Michelle Obama, where they had our kids perform with Michelle Obama on national TV. It's received the National Blue Ribbon designation. It's one of the top Title I schools. It's nationally recognized for that. There's so many awards that School 7 has received as a result of, and accolades as a result of their performance. So there's probably very little kids that would want to leave School 7 now because they've just grown accustomed to, the love and nurturing environment that School 7 is famous for. So that's Terrence Riley. That's one of them. And then, of course, we have 2 other schools that were National Blue Ribbon schools. One of them is the one that the board was able to cut the ribbon on in September of 2013, school number 21, Victor Mravlak, National Blue Ribbon School. That's considered one amongst the best in the nation. And that particular school, certainly under the leadership of Mary Sully Sanchez, will continue to outperform a lot of schools in other cities in the state of New Jersey. And then the last one is School 22 under the leadership of Mike Webb, which operates at the Monsignor João Antao School number 31. That's also a National Blue Ribbon School. So we feel very fortunate. There's not too many cities in the state of New Jersey that have 3 independently operating Blue Ribbon schools, but we're pretty lucky. And, we have great principals out there and just great parents leading the PTAs and the PTOs of these schools that have really shown that, as a community, we can unite together and have our kids achieve excellence.
We really do. We have, again, just touching on that, Don, we really do have a remarkable team of people here. And you spoke about accolades. And the 3 of us here, we got to experience a once-in-a-lifetime thing just a few weeks ago. It was being at the Super Bowl. That our band was a 3-time national champion. But what was that experience like for you?
Oh, it was great. The Super Bowl, it was such an honor to be invited. The only band in New Jersey to be representing the state of New Jersey at the Super Bowl. So when we got the invites and went over to the Super Bowl at the Meadowlands, the kids performed wonderfully all day long, and you could just tell they were having a ball. And as I said, the business office is always fully supportive of not only the academics, and our budget also supports our athletic program and, of course, the arts, which our shining star is the Elizabeth Minuteman Marching Band.
That is true. But you look like a kid in a candy store when we were at the game. I'll tell you, we were walking around inside the stadium and seeing all the celebrities and seeing all the sportscasters. Just to be there, being right here in our state, representing our state and our high school band, walking around with them, watching them perform from the different venues was just incredible. And once in a lifetime. And again, my thanks to all of the parents from the band, all their directors, their supervisors, and all the staff that worked so hard. with the band. Don, what was that experience like for you?
That was extraordinary, and you know what? Many people from other parts of the country, whether they were coming from Colorado, because they were supporting the Denver Broncos, or if they were coming from Seattle, they had the opportunity to see the best of what Elizabeth has to offer. And we know that we're from New Jersey and we have a unique personality. Everybody knows that. So when we showed up at the Super Bowl,
we showed up with our cowboy hats. We were there being all. We were out there with the Denver hats going on.
Yeah, I don't know if people thought that was good looking, but we tried to press that. But we did have a sign on the side of our bus that had Exit 13 on there, and we're proud from where we're from Elizabeth, New Jersey. And people got there and they had the opportunity to win our national championship high school band, and they were recognized on Fox News, on ESPN Sports, and some of the major TV stations all around the country. There was Elizabeth High School Minutemen performing for live for a national audience, and what can be said? That was one of those great moments in time when I'm sure will live forever for many of those kids.
And also invited to the media day for the Super Bowl in Newark at the Prudential Center. Once again, they were just shining examples of the best that Elizabeth has to offer.
Yeah, who would have ever thought that here, our city of Elizabeth would really reach these pinnacles of great achievements, and our band would be playing at the Super Bowl. Our school, our principal, Jennifer Cedeno, would be visiting the White House to meet the President Barack Obama, dancing on the TV show with Michelle Obama and her students from that school. This would have never even been, we would have even thought this, 10 years back. So again, just remarkable what's happening here in the city, and again, hats off to all the people who make it all possible. Don, a couple other things that I know took place in the last couple of years that never existed before, and I know was a part of it, and I probably was the one who might have even initiated it the first time, was the Excellence Parade. And I remember we joked about it. I said, when I think School 7 was awarded at the National Blue Ribbon School, and I looked at you and Bud, and I said, guys, we should do a parade. We were so proud of that school that they became a National Blue Ribbon School. And my idea was just to go parade around the block, just to take some banners and the students, and let's walk around the block and, beat our chest and say we're so proud of what we accomplished. And I think we took it a couple of steps, more. And Don, to your credit and your team, it was one of the most remarkable, incredible experiences of my life, as well as the students and the teachers, because when the parade was finally said and done that year, the smiles on the faces of those students and of those teachers and the staff, support staff, said it all. The parade was about them. It was for them. It had nothing to do with the Elizabeth Board of Education or any politics. It was their day. And Don, you guys want to talk about it? You were both there, and what it meant for you and your feelings and thoughts about it.
Well, personally, just to see our kids celebrating all the myriad of successes in their school, in our athletic teams, in the arts, and the smile, like you say, Tony, on their faces, it's just great to see. And why not? Why not the city of Elizabeth celebrate our schools? It just seemed like the right thing to do, and it started, as you said, a small idea that just snowballed to a full-blown parade right down Elizabeth Avenue.
I know Don lost a lot of sleep over that parade and
hair.
And some hair. And some hair.
Yeah.
And I remember us obviously there was a lot of some opposition out there about it. There was a lot of critics. Why are we doing this? Why? And then I said, why shouldn't we do this? Why shouldn't we recognize our students and our staff? They do it in other towns. And when it was all said and done, and then when the parade was over, I just remember people coming up to me and saying, when are we doing the next one? When is the next one? And the next one, a year later, was even that much more incredible because of just the energy, the passion, the commitment from all of these students. But what I take away from that day was the smiles on the faces of those kids. And what were your thoughts about that, Don?
Well, you know what? It kind of highlights one of the things that we rarely talk about now, but it was another change that this particular board helped undertake, which is creating neighborhood schools. And, there used to be a middle school program, and there was neighborhood schools at a certain level, but you don't have the type of pride that exists today in neighborhoods all over Elizabeth because people feel an attachment to their neighborhood school. I go there from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade now, And schools were creating mascots. They were showing up with their little mascot costumes, and they were decorating these floats, symbolizing the neighborhood culture, the mascots for their schools, what they wanted to go ahead and highlight. But there was a lot of pride. You could feel it. And you know what? That still continues today. Even without a parade, people really feel a connection now, whether it be their magnet school or their neighborhood school. So that's why you see all these kids wearing now the T-shirts for the various colors for their schools, and the mascots that are showing up to the events. We even had a mascot race last year, which I think is going to be an annual event now, where we see all the mascots go around the track at Williams Field, and that's turned out to be a really fun event.
It really was. You know, Don, you touched on something else, which is about bringing pride with our schools and our community. And you know, back in the days when I was a city councilman up in the North Elizabeth, how many times I would call you and wake you up out of bed and tell you, come on out to the park, and we'd plant some flowers and clean up the parks. And I always believe that bringing pride back is block by block. It's really a community. You know, you don't just do it overnight, but it was something I felt was missing back in the day when our parks weren't being cared for. And something as simple, but as bringing residents and kids into the parks and just getting some rakes and some plastic bags and cleaning our park, taking some pride in our own city. And I believe if you do that block by block, then it just snowballs. And here it's happening in our own school system. You know, there wasn't long ago, all of us remember, Don, that the pride wasn't in our school system. You were sort of kind of embarrassed to say you were from Elizabeth. And today that's changing. We're top school district. And that parade really was a culmination of all those years and all that hard work from the staff and Don and his team putting that together. And I want to segue into something else Don was talking about, was the mascots and the uniforms. Is another event we do, which is called the One Fest. And the One Fest is just a celebration that showcases the excellence of our students and that are taking place here in the city of Elizabeth. Don, I know you're one of the architects of the One Fest, so talk a little bit about what goes on in that weekend.
Well, I don't know if I'm the architect. Really, the architect are the teachers, the arts teachers in particular, the music teachers. They're the ones that really get One Fest to be what it is today, which is an exhibit of all of the talents from throughout Elizabeth. And One Fest, last One Fest was absolutely stunning. The amount of work that was put into exhibits that revolved around literacy. That was the theme, was reading. And we were really impressed with the level of talent that our kids have. Once again, you could tell right away that they're going to go off to do great things in their own careers, whether it be artistically, performance-wise, or whether it be painting, or as writers, poets, singers. You could see that there's a lot of talent in Elizabeth. And that was one of the other events that's tied into One Fest, which is a competitive program that we do on a yearly basis called Elizabeth's Got Talent, where kids from each school go up to the stage and either sing or perform to their best, and it's just extraordinary. You could see that these kids one day could really make it out and compete at the highest level, at the big time, whether it be American Idol or X Factor. You could see one of our kids doing that, because there's definitely talent here in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
There really is. And something else I take from the One Fest, Don and Bud, is even the synergy of our different schools and the staff, because we're a large school district, well over 4,000 plus employees and staff members, and they don't all get to share time and spend time with each other. And being such a large organization, what One Fest does that I experienced that weekend is there was competitions. We have softball games and soccer games between staff from different schools. And just, again, the good times, the cheering, the camaraderie, that's such a big part to being part of this Elizabeth Board of Education family, is that everyone shares the same passion for the school district. And like you said, Don, it really was a culmination of a lot of people, a lot of hard work. And again, we couldn't be prouder of that event as well.
Tony, we're related to pride in schools. I know you were instrumental over the last year and going forward of taking our board meetings on the road. So instead of having the board meeting in one location, we go around the city to different schools. Well, as we come in the door, you can see the pride. The students want to perform for the board. They want to perform for their parents who attend the meeting. Just another thing to get the board more involved and seeing what's going on out in the schools. It's good. That's a great idea.
That's a great point, Bud. I know we started this last year, taking the board meetings on the road, and having them engage other schools, communities, parents, staff that may have never visited or been part of a board meeting before, have never attended one. And what we're seeing, and then again, part to Don, the Broad Institute, this is something we learned when we were part of that Broad, is really recognizing all the wonderful talent we have here in our school district, from our students to our staff, to our support staff, even to community, because we have made presentations recognizing the hardworking men and women of the police department, fire department, different community organizations throughout the city of Elizabeth. So although our meetings are long, to say the least, our meetings are long, we spend that extra 2 or 3 hours to do just that, to recognize and give thanks to our staff members, to the performing students. So it is special. I think it's special for us as board members, and special for our community that they get to share that day with us. And in closing, that this being a budget presentation this week, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'd like to say that, this week, we're celebrating the National Education Teacher Week. And, let's salute all of the great teachers all over Elizabeth Public Schools. In fact, our superintendent, along with the board, will be sending out Proud Educator Elizabeth Public School buttons for all the teachers to wear, and as a symbolic sign of our respect for the work that they do. It's a tough job. It's a tough job being a teacher, especially in this time and age. And so many of our teachers do it with real class and finesse, and help prepare our kids, for a post-secondary education the way we expect them to. So let's salute all of our great teachers here in Elizabeth. I know that you will have many of them to recognize at our next board meeting, as you always do, because that's been one of the things that the board wants to do, is recognize teachers, recognize team members all over the district, and we'll be doing that again this week as well.
Yeah, that is true, Don. Thank you for bringing that up and highlighting that. It's so important. And I know one of the other remarkable, I think, achievements that this district has had, and in part because of our teachers, is our perfect scores. And I think you know that number better than I. What was that number several years ago, and what is it today, that perfect score? I know we do the perfect scores ceremony every year. I think now this past year was 410 students with perfect scores. And it wasn't more than, several years ago?
They're in the single digits.
They were in the single digits.
Yeah.
Single digits. And here we are today in 2014, and we have 400 some kids with perfect scores. And again, a testament to all the hardworking men and women, the teachers that that are making this happen throughout the district. Well, I want to thank you, Don Gonsalves and Mr. Bud Kennedy, for being here today on our Elizabeth Board of Education President's Forum on this budget. We spoke about a lot of things that are taking place here in the Elizabeth school system, and like I said before, and continue to say, we couldn't be prouder of all these young men and women who are making us the #1 urban school district in the state of New Jersey. Thank you.